This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Welcome back to the Moonlight Baseball Hour, where me, your host, Tim Flattery, and my bro, Neil Flattery, we discuss the baseball topic of the week. Sometimes it's topics, sometimes it's just one topic. Neil, first of all, welcome, Neil.
Thanks for having me again, Tim. I'm excited. I'm excited to get back together.
What did you think of the July 4th hats? This is not our topic, but what did you think of the July 4th MLB hats?
I thought they're pretty ugly. What did you think?
Maybe the worst version of them yet. Just awful. Awful in every sense of the word.
It just seems like I said, I'm fine with experimenting with a hat. It's one day, whatever. But don't mail it in. Like, put a little bit of effort into it.
Yeah, just so bad. I don't know. Enough of that. The one topic I want to talk to today is about Major League Baseball attendance, Neil. And here's why I want to talk about it. Just yesterday, so we're recording this on Thursday night. Yesterday, I was at my office, and I work at this office where, you know, there's some TVs in the office when there's sports on during the day, like during the Olympics or Wimbledon. People will have sports on in just kind of the general area, the break room of the office. And yesterday, the Cubs were playing the Brewers in a day game. I think it was either a noon or a 1 o'clock first pitch. And one of my coworkers, who's not a baseball fan, saw how many people were at Miller Park for that game at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Miller Park was basically sold out for the Cubs Brewers. Corbin Burns was on the mound for the Brew Crew, and it felt like an important game. And it was the start of July, midweek, day game. So it could not have been less important. And my colleague said, who still goes to baseball games? I thought baseball was a dying sport. And it got me thinking, like, man, I bet people would be shocked if they saw how many people throughout the country are going to Major League Baseball and minor league baseball games every day. So it led me down an MLB attendance rabbit hole. And Neil, that's what we're here to talk about today. Attendance in Major League Baseball.
Okay. Yeah, Tim, I've been looking into this quite a bit too. So where do you want to go with this?
Well, when I first sent the topic of MLB attendance to you, right, I sent it to you maybe 5 hours ago to give you some time to prepare for this. What was your initial thought of MLB attendance? Like, where did you initially want to take it?
Well, initially I had been hearing a little bit about how attendance had been down specifically this year so far. And I think that is the case to some extent. And we're going to get into more on why we think that may be the case. But I think when I was actually looking at how many people are attending these games so far in the year, I was kind of surprised that it wasn't. I thought it would be a little bit worse than what I was seeing too. We've talked about before, there seems like a lot of teams that aren't trying to win this year, and their attendance has suffered as a result. But I mean, there's still a lot of teams there that are drawing 30,000 plus night in and night out. Granted, we haven't played in the most favorable weather yet this year. We're just getting into July now, when I think we'll see the most attendance at some of these games. But one of the things that stuck out to me though, on the negative end, is I would have thought the Yankees attendance would be a little bit higher, considering how good of a season they're having and how Aaron Judge is putting up really good numbers, and they're not even at 40,000 yet. And there's really only the Dodgers are averaging over 40,000, and they're averaging almost 50,000 a game, which is pretty incredible. Granted, they don't have any weather issues there, so a game in April is the same as the game in July for LA. But those are kind of my initial thoughts. Well, what did you think, Tim?
Yeah, when I looked at the MLB attendance numbers, I was shocked. I was shocked at how high they were, knowing that we're coming off of a lockout, knowing that we have not even hit July, like the full stretch of July and August. So typically in a baseball season, the three biggest attendance months of the season are July, August, and October. So these attendance numbers that we're going to share with you are only going to go up. So when I look at the top 15 teams in Major League Baseball as far as attendance goes, I couldn't believe how many people are going to baseball games every night. So you mentioned it. The Dodgers are number one. They're averaging over 48,000 fans a night. Just think about that. Like, this is not the NFL where there's only 8 home games a year, 8 or 9 home games. This is not the NBA where there's only 40 to 41 home games per year. This is 81 games. There are 162 games for every team every season. And it's just amazing that 48,000 people are going to every Dodger game. And that number is probably going to get up over 50,000 because the Dodgers are good and because the highest attendance months are still out there. But even after LA, you've got St. Louis averaging almost 40,000 a game. Atlanta, the defending champs, over 38,000 a game. The Yankees, who are on a historic pace, they're at 38,000 fans a game. And then you even have San Diego at 36,000. Colorado, who's not even any good, at 33,000. Houston at 33,000. The Chicago Cubs, who stink this year, they're in the top 10 at 32,000. Then Boston, New York, LA Angels, San Francisco, and Toronto are all over 30,000 fans a night. It's remarkable because, Neil, I grew up going to sporting events at Hilton Coliseum, which you did as well. Hilton Coliseum holds less than 15,000 people. And they might have 5 to 10 sellouts per year, Hilton Coliseum, at 14 to 15,000 people a night. There are double that many people going to, on average, every major league game every night across the country. And that's just hard to wrap my head around.
Yeah, that's a good point, Tim. And to put like the LA Dodgers numbers into perspective, I'm just looking at the Pac-12 attendance for football games in 2021. And USC averaged 56,000 a game, and UCLA averaged about 45,000 a game.
So the Dodgers pull in more than UCLA football. That's incredible.
That's incredible. I mean, are there 6 home games a year for UCLA?
Right.
And they draw 45,000 a game. That's pretty remarkable. I mean, the one thing I would say is I still think, just looking at this year compared to maybe the few years prior to the pandemic, I think there is a little bit of a decline still. But like you said, I think that's understandable considering we haven't got into July and August and that sort of thing too. And I do think with the lockout and stuff, and just the fact that we took a year off from going to games. And so there's usually kind of a holdover from the year before. If your team did bad, then season tickets will go down. And so to start the next season, your attendance is going to be down, if you didn't get those season tickets bought in the off season, if you had a bad year. So basically everyone kind of had that because there was a dulled excitement for baseball after the pandemic. And especially the Twins, I'm disappointed to see the Twins only averaging $20,000 a game. But I mean, if there's any team that's affected by the early season weather more, I mean, it's probably the Twins. Probably have the worst weather early in the season. But other than that, I mean, I think people would be surprised too when they look at attendance in the game today compared to where it was 50, 60 years ago, when a lot of people consider that to be like the golden era of baseball. And I agreed with them that probably was the golden era of baseball, in the sense that at that time baseball held this spot in society that, it's probably never going to be matched again. But if you look at the attendance in like the 50s and the 60s, they were only averaging, around 15,000 fans a game. Whereas now, even in this year where attendance has been down a little bit, we're still averaging about 25,000 fans at every game.
It's actually over 27,000 fans a game on average. And that's including Oakland, who's averaging 8,000 fans a game. Their fans are essentially protesting the team in Oakland right now. And then Miami is at 11,000. Tampa Bay is at 14,000. Those are the bottom 3. Even including those numbers in the average, the average attendance at an MLB game is still over 27,000 fans a game. Essentially 2 sold out Hilton Coliseums is the average Major League Baseball game.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable.
And
I think
we
one
should
thing,
point out the golden era of baseball, most of those games are played during the day. So now most every game, 90% of the games in the MLB schedule today are night games. So they're after work. They're more accessible to people that work and to families. So that's a big thing, but it's also a big feather in baseball's cap. So if you look at like the NBA attendance, and granted, MLB stadiums are bigger than NBA arenas. I get that. But you got to remember that NBA games, they play half as many games as Major League Baseball. And the number one attendance NBA team was the Chicago Bulls at under 21,000 fans a game. So when we talk about popularity, I know that like that's almost capacity of the United Center. So they're almost selling out the United Center for about every game on average, about 21,000 fans per game for the Bulls. But you got to remember, like, that's still 7,000 more people going to a baseball game every night than the number one NBA attendance team. Like, that's just still a ton of people. It's the town of Webster City difference between the number one team in basketball attendance and the average MLB game.
right? Yeah, I know. I've complained about the Twins' attendance being down this year, and their attendance is about at what the Chicago Bulls was for the whole NBA season. And one thing I think the baseball has going for it too is just that
you're right, Neil. Just to stop you on that point, the Twins, who have had a disappointing attendance season so far, being first place, 4.5 games up in the Central, and those numbers are probably going to go up because the weather's going to get better. They're contending team. They average 100 less fans per game than the Chicago Bulls, the number one attendance team in the NBA.
Yeah.
100 less fans per game.
Yeah, and I think what baseball has going for it too, as far as going to these games, is it's fun to be outside at the ballpark. I mean, I think that goes without saying, but I think it is cool, and it is cool, especially how each stadium has its own character to it. And I think especially with these new stadiums that are coming up, there's a really an intimate feel to it. And, you go to a game at Target Field too, and it's like they got all like the specialty food vendors. They got like microbreweries everywhere you look. There's like silent auction items, and there's all these different things to do while you're at the game too, which make it fun. And then on top of that, you have, just it's fun to watch a game, and there's not really a bad seat in the house too. Which really makes it fun. And the video boards are cool and all this stuff, where I think with these new stadiums that they've built, they've really done it right in that sense. And I think you look at the attendance numbers in like the 2000s, where there was basically a new stadium being built every year, and they're all kind of in the same mold. And I think that really helped. And I think it's hurting the A's specifically because they're like the last team that still has one of those old cookie cutter stadiums, which I kind of appreciate. Because I don't know, I've never been there, but I like that there's still like an old stadium out there that's kind of run down. But I think you look at these, like the last 10 years, we really haven't had a new stadium or a lot of new stadiums that have been built. We had the Rangers new stadium a couple of years ago, which kind of looks like a Home Depot, but it was built, right in the middle of the pandemic. So they didn't really get that spike in attendance that you usually get when you build a new stadium.
Yeah, the Braves just built that new stadium as well, and they won the World Series. And, their attendance obviously is very, very good along with that. But to your point, like if you look at the MLB attendance numbers, some of these teams at the bottom too are, some of these small market teams. Cincinnati, Cleveland, Kansas City, Baltimore is not a small market. Pittsburgh, I guess, is not a small market either. But these are traditional sports towns. And we've seen, even Oakland, who the fans are protesting the team right now, just a couple of years ago, Oakland was averaging 25,000 fans a night. And same thing with Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Cleveland, Cincinnati, even Detroit. When those cities do have good teams, you see their attendance numbers up over 25,000 per night for those cities. they're just, smart baseball fans where a lot of them aren't going to go out and see a crappy product. But even to that point, even though those teams are struggling, like Kansas City stinks right now, they're still bringing out 16,000 fans to the ballpark 81 times a year.
Yeah. And you say that too, like I look at like the attendance numbers for this year, San Diego is number 5. And I think there's been a lot of years where San Diego, they haven't always had a rich tradition of good baseball over there, but they're averaging 36,000 a game in San Diego. And I know that's a really nice ballpark too. But there'd probably be years where San Diego, when they were down in the dumps, where they're averaging less than 20,000 a game. So you can kind of see how that would get flipped with some of these teams, depending on how well they're doing. Colorado at the 6th most attendance so far this season surprises me too.
Yeah,
for how bad they've been.
For perspective, the Kansas City Royals average more fans every night than the Memphis Grizzlies, who were like the darlings of the NBA this past season.
Yeah, it makes me think that, like, I know that, like, on a national, like, as far as like this, the national conversation around sports, like the NBA generates a lot more buzz on that sense. But I just get the impression that not a lot of people are watching a lot of regular season NBA games from start to finish. But like I said, I don't watch a lot of NBA, but I watched a lot of the playoffs this year, but I don't watch a lot of the regular season. And I feel like it's turning into like a reality TV show, and it's not like people are tuned into the first 4 quarters of every game.
Well, the NBA offseason is definitely more entertaining than the NBA regular season. And the NBA is definitely more of a national game than the MLB is. MLB is way more regional. And to that point, what's kind of funny is the crazy blackout rules that exist for MLB TV that everybody complains about and acts like this is just some really simple fix. Is this fixing the blackouts? And I'm not opposed to fixing the blackouts here, but the same blackout rules exist in the NBA. Just nobody cares about the regional NBA games like they do in Major League Baseball. In the NBA, there's a handful of games on throughout the week on national television. That's all anybody cares to watch because it's LeBron, the Warriors, the Knicks every now and again. Those are the teams that people care about. So those are the games that people watch. Nobody watches the Timberwolves on Bally Sports North. Now, you have that same blackout rule with baseball. Now, all the fans of baseball are regional. They care a lot less about the national games that happen 5 times a week, and they care a lot more about every night watching their team, unlike the NBA where nobody cares about the regular midweek games. And that's why the blackout rules are much more apparent in the NBA or in the MLB than they are in the NBA, because frankly, no regional fans don't exist in the NBA. It's all national fans. Baseball is the exact opposite. It's all regional fans.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting too. Like we say that NBA is so much more of a national game than MLB. And I get that. And I agree with that. But it's funny when you look at even like TV viewership for the World Series compared to the NBA Finals. It's basically the same amount. And even MLB, the World Series maybe even draws more than the NBA Finals, which I just don't understand how, why there is such a disconnect between what people, assume is the interest level between the MLB and the NBA and how many people are actually watching these games. Like the final game of the World Series, let's see, it averaged 11 million viewers last year, the 2021 World Series. The NBA Finals this year averaged about 11. I can't remember. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but it's very similar.
Here's what MLB needs to figure out: how to make their off season juicier.
I know. And I think the problem is with the MLB offseason is that you can add Mike Trout to your team and it's not going to put you in the playoffs automatically. And we're seeing that with the Angels. And we've talked about this before. It's frustrating because they need to find a way to get Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani in the playoffs, because that's when people are tuning in and watching them. And I think that's when the national audience is tuning in as well. And it's crazy how the Angels are so bad and they have the best 2 players, not just the best 2 players in baseball right now, but like in defense, like there's no discussion. Well, I guess Aaron Judge is probably in the discussion now, but they're just so clearly like 2 of the premier players in the league, and they're still terrible.
I know it's pretty remarkable, but I guess we're doing comparing MLB to NBA right now, but you got to remember LeBron didn't make the playoffs last year either.
That's true. I mean, LeBron is getting older though.
We just turned into an anti-LeBron pod.
But I do think that is, I don't know how you fix that, but you got to find a way to get, especially Shohei Ohtani, who's this generational talent. You got to find a way to get him in the playoffs.
I mean, but isn't the answer just the Angels need to win?
I know, but they have Mike Trout, and they picked up Noah Syndergaard in the offseason.
And they don't even play in a tough league. That's what's crazy, is the AL West is theirs for the taking.
Still probably going to miss out. I mean, they could still make a run, but I think they're like 7 games back in a wild card spot at this point. One other thing, I heard some people complaining on Twitter, and I agree with them too, is just the fact that, July 4th was on a Monday this year, and that's one of the scheduled off days during the week for a lot of MLB teams. And the fact that MLB did not try to capitalize on July 4th weekend and have a full slate of games on that schedule, a lot of people were complaining about it, but it really is indefensible how, you got a holiday like that. In other sports, the NFL would have just really tried to capitalize on having that free Monday to have games. And I don't know what they're doing.
Baseball does a lot of things wrong. I would hope that the reason behind that has to do with the but the lockout schedule. Because if you look at some of the MLB schedules over the past couple of weeks, teams have been playing like 12 games in 10 days coming up into this week. Like the Twins have played a crazy schedule. The Indians were playing a crazy schedule, or the Guardians. I'm guessing a lot of teams were in a similar boat there, and it just happened to run up against July 4th. But to your point, you should make an exception on July 4th. Baseball has to own that date. And it should be like opening day, right? It kind of like a baseball holiday where there's games going on, first pitch at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. East Coast all through the night. That's what 4th of July should be.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we don't have a full slate of MLB games. So Tim and I are watching like the doubles at Wimbledon instead of watching the MLB games.
Right. Well, that's still good TV though.
That's true. I'm not complaining.
What's crazy about, I'm going back to the NBA, I should never have started this topic. That is such a reality show that you have like so many of the best players don't even play basketball anymore, and their value still goes. Zion stayed out the entire season last year and signed a max deal. Didn't play the entire season. Ben Simmons did not play the entire season. James Harden sat out most of the season. He was just fat, like all Kyrie Irving. So many of the top players in basketball literally do not play basketball anymore and still are getting paid like $40 to $50 million. It's just kind of crazy. Kawhi Leonard, like almost half of the top 30 best players in the NBA played under half of the games last season. It's nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to me too how these players in the NBA, and here this was kind of the whole point of us starting this podcast, is we listen to some of these sports commentators talk about, the NBA when we want them to talk about baseball. And here we are talking about the NBA again. But it's crazy how much power they have. Like, no one in MLB can be like, oh, I got 2 years left on my contract, but I just want to get traded. Like, no one would even think about doing that. They don't have as much. Because they can't. Do MLB players just say, I don't want to play and just sit out? Like, every 5th game? I don't know anyone that does that. I mean, I know they do it for people who are recovering from injuries and stuff like that. And I know I went on a Buxton rant that was pretty bad a couple weeks ago about that, but it's just crazy.
I don't know, Neil. We're not going to get it all figured out here tonight, but this has been a pretty decent Moonlight Baseball Hour. We should tee it up. We had some big happenings just yesterday. Neil and I are going to be playing a tennis match on a grass court in Iowa, and we're going to be doing a pod on it. Neil, thoughts on the upcoming tennis match?
I'm excited. I've been looking on the internet to try to find some white polos because we want to do like kind of like a Wimbledon theme where we're all decked out in white too. But I've only got out on the courts once this year, so I'm hoping I can play my cousin David. I guess I should say our cousin David next week to kind of tune up. But I'm excited. Should be fun.
I'm gonna watch some YouTube videos on how to move around on grass. I think you got to shorten your stride. You got to be a lot more nimble with your feet. Long strides will cause you to slip and potentially pull a groin, Neil. So I think I can see you pulling a groin.
That's true too. Yeah, I'll stretch. Yeah, I'm a big serve and volley guy. If I can get that first serve in, probably, a quarter of the time, I think I should be in good shape.
That's been the Moonlight Baseball Hour. Thank you for tuning in this week, and have a great week, Moonlighters.
It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. It's a pretty good program, broadcasting to the heartland. Sports stories for the everyman. It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. Please follow us on Instagram. You're loving us on Twitter too. You download every pod we do. It's Moonlight Graham.